A little while ago now. It's been a few weeks. Back on July 25th of 2025, or July 26th of 2025, we had heard the news that people were stabbed at a Walmart in Traverse City. And so we're going to show you guys a video. This video is a little bit disturbing. Just a warning for anybody who doesn't want to watch. You can fast forward a minute or so, but we're gonna show you a video.
Drop it! Drop the Throw the knife that way! Throw it away! Throw it away!
Hey, he hasn't dropped it.
I don't care. Lay down! You better get the down. Nope.
Wow. Okay, so what did we see there? What happened?
So there's a lot of stuff going on in that video, but one of the things we see is that police response was pretty quick. We see all the sheriff's, vehicles. Police response was very fast, but police weren't there when the stabbing started, and police didn't stop the stabbing. An armed citizen, yet again, another armed citizen to the rescue, saved people's lives, probably in this case. So we're going to talk a little bit about the timeline of events, what happened, and then we'll kind of talk about some lessons learned and things that I think could be beneficial for everybody listening. So on Friday, July 25th, a judge in Emmett County issued a court order for the suspect. So this guy's name is Brad Gilley. And the court order was to take him into custody and hospitalize him due to concerns that he was a danger to himself and others. Law enforcement actively searched for him and couldn't find him. He didn't have a valid address on file or anything like that. And so the search was the whole day before the stabbing occurred. So the very next day, after they've looked for him, can't find him, Gilley enters that Walmart near Traverse City at about 4:10 p.m. At 4:10, he enters the store, and at 4:43, he is still just lingering inside the Walmart. He has not started doing anything bad at that point. At 4:43, Gilley began stabbing shoppers with a roughly 3.5-inch folding knife.
Jeez.
He started in the checkout area, continued through the vestibule, and later outside in the parking lot as well, for a total of 11 people injured. 6 men and 5 women. The age range is between 29 and 84. There was one person in their 20s, 2 people in their 30s, 1 person in their 40s and 50s, but we had 3 people in their 80s. As we kind of got up in age, we saw more victims. So 2 in their 60s, 1 in their 70s, 3 in their 80s. And some of the eyewitnesses were sharing in their, interviews after the fact and to their cameras, they were saying things like, oh, he was just stabbing anyone nearby. And so what I think we can learn from just this right off the bat is that those folks who couldn't get away fast enough were fairly defenseless in this situation. The people who saw what was happening, recognized it, and instantly took action to move themselves to a different location ended up faring much better. I think a lot of times our brain wants to tell us that things are fine or that we're misseeing what's happening right in front of us. So people were hearing screaming, they were maybe seeing blood on the ground, and our brain doesn't want to tell us, yeah, you could die in the next moment. That's a terrifying thing for your brain to tell you. And so a lot of folks were saying things like, oh, this couldn't be happening. There was a gentleman kind of being interviewed after the fact, and he said, we were all looking at each other in disbelief, like, is this real life? And that just tells you that precious seconds were being wasted where these folks are looking at each other trying to figure out what's going on. So one lesson to learn here is as soon as you feel like you're in danger, take action. Start doing something. A lot of people fled. That's a great option here. If you don't have a weapon, leaving the scene, getting out of knife reach, great option. But also the tool may not look like what you expect it to look like. This was a little pocket knife,
Yeah.
a 3.5-inch folding knife.
Yep.
This is not something that's illegal pretty much anywhere. You could get one of these at like the gas station.
Yeah.
This is not a huge knife at all, and it still did significant damage. There were people who were in critical condition from this stabbing. Luckily, within a minute, a nearby sheriff's deputy arrived on the scene of the first 911 call. So within a minute of the 911 call happening, somebody was there.
Which is fast.
That's just luck.
But not fast enough.
It's fast, but it's not fast enough for sure. And it's also just lucky. He just happened to be a minute away from Walmart.
Well, in backing up, you were talking about, hey, a person's mind processing what's going on. So I got to tell you, I think that's my biggest fear. My biggest fear is not being able to process what's going on and preventing me from taking action. Like,
Yeah.
not right. Like, gosh, is this what I think it is? Is this really? That's my biggest fear. And I think that can be summed up with mindset.
For sure.
And I think when people go through class, when I've gone through classes, I can honestly say I didn't take the lecture on mindset as seriously as maybe I should have, or and should in the future. It didn't quite make sense to me at first. I'm talking, when I first started taking classes over a decade ago.
Yeah.
But that's what is meant by mindset. So if you're just sitting in a class waiting, like, I can't wait to get to the shooting part, this mindset thing is crucial. It really is. Anyone that's been in any kind of emergency situation, had any kind of stress, knows that there's kind of this, what do I do next? Or is this actually happening? Or, relying on, being overtrained is definitely something that I think we all should be made more aware of. I mean, it's just not normal to go to a Walmart and have a mass stabbing. That's not a normal thing. So when your brain sees it, you potentially could freeze up. But fortunately, some folks, rattled themselves out of that and intervened.
Yeah, definitely. I think sometimes too, when you have taken classes and you have learned about mindset, you're still not expecting this to happen in front of you. Like, it's a possibility that it's a risk that exists, but you're not expecting to see it unfold in front of you. And I think I want to stress that it's probably going to happen to everybody that you have that moment of doubt or moment of confusion. What's important is taking the next step as fast as you can. So yeah, your brain might be like, what's happening? Let me look around, get some more information, but then let's start making good choices right away. Even if you're the only one running, run. It doesn't matter if you look silly. It could save your life. Or if you're the only person who's going away from the noise and everybody else is like, oh, what's that? Let me get a little closer. Don't follow the crowd just because it's what they're doing. Sometimes it takes one person being brave and doing the hard thing. I'm not going to advocate for unarmed people getting involved in an armed fight. That's a very personal decision. If you believe that, you want to get involved and potentially save lives, and you're willing to put your own life on the line for that, more power to you. I think that's heroic. I think we had multiple heroes in this story.
Well, let's talk about the cop. Okay, so the cop showed up about a minute after the 911 call, but it's important to point out, too, that 911 call didn't happen immediately.
No.
There was carnage going on.
3 minutes or so before the 911 call got placed.
So it's reasonable to say from the time this guy first did damage to somebody to the time a cop got out of his car, he didn't actually get to do anything yet, but by the time he actually got out of his car was at least 4 minutes.
Yeah.
And a lot can happen and did happen in 4 minutes.
People can bleed out in 4 minutes. Like, that's bleed out amount of time. That's way more time than it takes to actually bleed out if you have a severe bleed. So we've got moments later in the parking lot, right? Yep. So the guy started stabbing inside. He's working his way outside, still stabbing people in the parking lot. Moments later, we see multiple bystanders intervene. And that's kind of the portion of that video that you guys saw was right when the bystanders started doing something. Mm-hmm. We see somebody with a shopping cart, kind of bump into him at one point. We see a guy, yelling at him with no shoes on. I think that guy ended up being a veteran. And then we see Derek Perry with a gun, and he's commanding him to drop the knife, and he's essentially holding him at gunpoint. And I want to say that allegedly Gilly heard voices in his head. That's what brought him to this place. Allegedly, he was hearing voices in his head telling him to stab people, to kill people. Everybody screaming did not cut through to the voices in Gilly's head. The blood on the ground did not cut through. All of the people running and yelling at him and telling him to drop the knife did not cut through the voices in his head. But you know what did? Having a gun pointed at his face. All of a sudden, the voices got quiet enough for him to comply. Whether or not he heard voices, I don't know. But he's alleging he did. And the only thing that brought him out of that crazed psychosis murder spree, was a gun being pointed at him and somebody telling him to drop the knife with the backup to do something about it.
And that guy pointing the gun was Derek Perry.
Derek Perry.
Who
yes.
was at one point in the Marine Corps. And
yeah.
Thank you so much, Derek, for stepping up and saving lives. There was also a guy named Matthew Kolakowski who looked like, I don't know, was Derek the only armed person that you saw?
Yes.
Okay, so Derek was the only guy with a gun.
Derek was armed. The Matthew was the one, I believe, in the purple shirt that didn't have shoes on. He was yelling. He had a strong command presence. You know, he was being very firm in his directions. But again, I don't think firm directions alone were going to stop this guy. I don't think he was going to put the knife down. I think people were giving him firm directions while he was stabbing the 11 people.
Right.
You know, so the thing that actually assisted in subduing this guy was the threat of deadly violence back on him. That worked. That got through to him really quickly. Thankfully, the injuries were fairly minor. You know, there were some folks who were pretty injured, but so far we haven't had any deaths from this. They said everybody was expected to survive. There were a couple folks in serious condition, I think critical condition as well, but everybody has lived as far as we know as of today. And there were 11 individuals total hospitalized from this incident. But this dude, this bad guy, isn't just a stabber. He's not just a violent, felon. He has a long documented history. He has had lots and lots of run-ins with law enforcement over the years. He has a diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia from 1999, multiple criminal convictions, including serious convictions like domestic violence, assault, and he has a 2017 case where he was found not guilty by reason of insanity in a grave digging incident in Emmett County.
Jeez.
So in 2017, this dude
and he's just walking around
that he was so crazy that he shouldn't be in jail, but now he just gets to live among us and stab people at Walmart.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's insane. I think
it's
that's crazy. If you were so insane that you didn't have to go to jail or prison because of a crime you committed, but you were too insane to be held responsible, why are you living among the rest of the sane?
And this is in 2017?
2017.
That doesn't seem like enough time. Like, let's just say someone does get, put into a medical facility rather than a jail because they're guilty or they're not guilty by reasons of insanity. That doesn't seem like enough time to not be insane anymore. And clearly it wasn't because he grabbed a knife and stabbed 11 people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think his schizophrenia was going to magically disappear. Maybe they had, medications. Maybe he was more sane for certain periods of his life. I know his mom spoke to some reporters and was sharing that he's had a long history of being medicated, but when he stops taking his medications, things get scary. So, the day before the attack, they did issue that court order, and that court order was for him to be hospitalized because they thought he was a danger to himself and others. So, law enforcement was trying to, or the justice system was trying to get him back into custody, but because they couldn't find him, they couldn't get him, they didn't detain him, and I don't know if I don't know how hard they looked for him. I know that the Emmett County Sheriff's Department, I believe, is who looked for him, and they said they spent a good portion of the day trying to find him. I think they had some different homeless encampments that they were looking in and things like that, trying to locate this guy.
Well, let's talk about this. I mean, did you hear about this story because it was all over CNN and MSNBC And everybody was talking about what a great solution it is when people get to exercise their Second Amendment. Is that how you came across this story?
No.
So
what
what are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on, first off, how did you come across the story? And then what are your thoughts on the fact that this almost got nothing?
No coverage.
No traction.
I get alerts from an app, and I'm not sponsored by this app or anything like that. It's just called Citizen. I don't pay for the extra money to get more information. I just have the free version. Mm-hmm. I like it because it gives you updates for like your local area, but it'll also tell you just important news from anywhere. And so I get alerts from the app whenever something serious happens, like a mass shooting or mass casualty event. So that's how I first came to hear about it. It was an alert on my phone saying there was a stabbing. I looked at the location. It wasn't San Diego, so I just closed the notification. A little while later, I'm on my phone and I see an article about a bunch of people getting stabbed at a Walmart. I read the whole article. There was no mention in the original article that there was any civilian response at all. There was no mention of a good guy with a gun. At this point, I didn't know that existed. I didn't know that was part of this story. Right. All I knew was that a crazy guy stabbed 11 people. A bunch of people were in the hospital. The police response was really quick. That's all I knew. Fast forward a few hours later, more and more articles are coming out, and somebody that I know in San Diego texted me and said, "Hey, have you seen this video on TikTok?" I don't have TikTok, so I did not see the video, but I had her screen record the video and text it to me, and she sent me that video, a piece of that video that we just watched, right. And clearly you see Derek has a gun in his hand. So I start scouring all the articles I can find for any mention of this dude with a gun. I actually emailed multiple people who wrote articles and said, you owe the readers a correction to this article because you didn't mention one of the most important pieces of it, which is that a civilian was a hero and saved lives. Good for today.
You. Did you get a response?
No responses. I sent like 7 or 8 emails, no responses from any of them.
What a shock.
Shocking. And I don't think emails are the answer. I don't think that's going to solve anything. But I hope the writer, I hope you felt bad. I hope you read my email and you were like, dang, I'm a bad person for intentionally skipping that part. But yeah, I think it's such a shame that the media refuses to cover the good piece of Second Amendment culture and what the Second Amendment allows normal everyday people to do. It saves lives.
It does, and there's I'm sure there's a lot of things going on that cause that, but two of the things that come to mind are, one, there are stop the press, but there are media that are anti-gun. They're advancing a narrative. And then I think equally as big a problem is media is so sensationalized, and if nothing happened, what do you mean 11 people lived? That's not going to get clicks, Right. So they don't cover it. They aren't creative enough and motivated enough to show the angle that, hey, look, we have found a solution, for when people go off the deep end 100%. And are armed with a 3-inch knife, and that angle they don't feel gets enough clicks, mm-hmm. They don't, or ironically enough, oddly enough, they feel that is the narrative. That's the political part where it's like, no. What you're pushing, this gun control or whatever, when you sensationalize, a murder and, say that it's the 278th mass shooting and, this year or whatever, which, none of that's true. When you sensationalize, that's the narrative.
Right.
They're not staying away from a narrative by saying, hey, look, it looks like we found, a solution or something that works when it comes to keeping people safe and keeping the society safe and keeping a neighborhood safe. It looks like this is actually really effective. That's not the narrative. That's the fact. Yeah. The narrative is this whole, well, gee golly, we got to get rid of guns, which is what they push. And both those things are equally as dangerous.
Yeah, one of the articles that I had read was focusing on the guy with the shopping cart. A guy with a shopping cart hit him. That's great. Yeah. That dude also is heroic. That was a heroic action that you were unarmed and you were willing to put your life in danger for random strangers at Walmart. Heroic. Yeah. But why was that being talked about and not the gun? when the gun is the thing that actually stopped the attack. We see that clearly in the video. The dude is looking at the gun. The Gilly is looking at the gun.
Yeah.
He's not looking at the shopping cart guy like, oh, this guy's going to mess me up with the shopping cart. He's looking at the dude with the gun, and he's listening to him when he's telling him to put the knife down. He obeys the command because there was a gun to back it up.
So are you going to start a new organization, call it A Girl in a Shopping Cart? And start encouraging people to carry shopping carts everywhere? No, of course not. What else about the story? Anything else that you want to talk about as far as knives or this story or what happened or the media coverage?
I think sometimes we think about how, like, for example, in California, we've got rules about what kind of knives you can carry. Mm-hmm. Anybody with bad intentions can use anything to take life. Mm. Somebody who cares enough could use a, laptop charger and choke somebody to death. Like, death is all around if somebody's motivated enough to find it. Mm-hmm. So no matter what tools we, restrict, no matter what knives and guns and options that we are taking away from people, if they want to kill people bad enough, they will find a way to kill people. And I think, sometimes we think about things like pocket knives as, oh, that's just a little knife. Like, no, that can still take life. I mean, luckily in this case, he wasn't a great attacker and he didn't get a bunch of lives taken, but he tried, and he maybe could have tried harder, in a way that would have actually resulted in death. But we see something like a pocket knife and we think like, oh, this is kind of a little story. This doesn't really have any relevance. It's not a big attack. This could happen anywhere to anyone, no matter what the laws are.
There you go.
And we have gun-free zones. We have places where we can't carry here in California particularly. And these things are happening in California. I mean, this story wasn't in California, but there are stories where people are getting attacked in gun-free zones. The government's not protecting you. The facility that you're in that is gun-free isn't protecting you. They don't have armed security following you around, making sure nobody attacks you with a pocket knife. So we have to take our own lives and our own, personal responsibility into our own hands and make sure that we are making choices that are safest for us and that we're doing what we can to protect ourselves and our families because nobody else is going to do it.
Hey, thanks for watching Gun Owners Radio. I hope you loved that clip. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and follow us on social media, and check out our website at gunownersradio.com.